Hamid Attie, who I've known a long time. He is an amazing photographer. I've been trying to get him to come speak. It's taken me a little while. This is the second time he's finally said yes. But only because he didn't know what he was going to talk about. And I think he's just an amazing photographer. Many cookbooks that you've seen in bookstores all over the place. Look up who the credits of the photography is. It's Hamid. Many restaurants hire him for all their photography, which goes in, for all the shots of the food that goes in their menus, on their websites, everywhere. It's not too often you have a photographer come and talk. I know that, but I've always thought it'd be great to have a photographer bring a different element to food talks. You hear about the people behind the food companies, then you get to see the guy behind the lens who's taking the photos of that cool and glorious food. So please join me in welcoming Hamid Attie, who's actually going to take us through a full photo presentation of all his photos.
I found that on the internet today. I didn't take that picture. You don't look a day out of high school, Richard. And I wanted to start as some of the other guests have by thanking you for putting this all together and for making me go at last. It's not the ideal position. When Richard asked me to do a presentation, I asked him if I could do a slideshow. I'm a photographer. And he flat out said, nope, we're trying to keep this low tech. You just go up and you talk for 10 minutes. And I said, but Richard, I'm a photographer. And a picture is worth 1,000 words. And such. And he said, look, it's called Food Talks. You just go up and you talk. So I spent 3 weeks crafting a 10-minute speech. These are some of my earlier attempts. And when I was finished writing that speech, Richard called back. And he said, hey, you know what? You can do a slideshow. So here we are. I have a lot of photography students that email me these days. I think their teachers put them up to it. Invariably, their question is, how do you become a professional photographer? And more specifically, how do you become a professional photographer in the food and restaurant industry? I give them the long answer. And it goes something like this. I was born in 1967 in a rural town in the countryside of Lebanon. A civil war or two later, my family fled to a small rural town in southwestern Ontario, Chatham, Ontario. Of all the places a fleeing family could flee to, they picked Chatham, Ontario. These are my teenage years. In 1989, at the ripe age of 22, I fled Chatham, Ontario. And I arrived in Vancouver. You can keep laughing, it's okay. And immediately, I embarked on my illustrious career as a waiter. I got my first job at Earl's on Top on Robson Street. In my very first month, I won the gold pin. I was Employee of the Month. In my second month, I got fired. I didn't fill up all the ketchup bottles at the end of the lunch service. But you see, I did fill up all the ketchup bottles. But it's a big restaurant, and there were a lot of people eating French fries, and the ketchup bottles just kept coming in. It didn't end, and I had a date. I also have an Umberto story. My second job was at Satabello, which is owned by Umberto. I had a ponytail at the time, just one, not two. And Umberto didn't like employees, male employees specifically, to have ponytails. So I hid that thing in the back of my shirt, underneath my collar, and I got away with it for a few months. And then one day, Umberto was in for lunch, and the ponytail popped out of the back of my shirt. It was like a rat. I just ran across the restaurant. And Umberto fired my ass. You wouldn't have fired me for having a ponytail, would you, Mr. Bishop? That's why you're the nicest man in this business. My third and fourth jobs were working at the Rain City Grill, which is owned by Harry Campbell's. Harry owns RCG, NC, and New. He's a man of few vowels. Harry and I were, and to this day, are very close friends. And when his manager, Peter Bodmerod, fired me, Harry hired me back. And when his next manager, Brent Heyman, fired me, Harry was in Greece on holidays. But when Harry got back from his vacation, he hired me back. And he said the words that would change my life. He said, maybe you should try something else. He had a point. I had been studying photography during the last few years of my waitering career, and it was time that I applied myself in that direction. Rhonda May, who's the editor of City Food magazine, hired me for my first few serious gigs. She would say two things for every assignment. First thing was, we don't have much of a budget for this one. And the second one, which was more important to me, she'd say, shoot it any way you want. This particular assignment was all the top sommeliers in Vancouver at the time. It was the dawn of the digital age. I think I got a little carried away with this one. We shot an entire issue on culinary visionaries. That's Sinclair Phillips of the Souk Harbor House. It's one of my favorite portraits we did for that particular issue. And another one was the emerging celebrity status of chefs. Does anyone know who that is in the middle? It's Gord Martin. People think Gord Martin is a chef who thinks he's a rock star, but actually Gord Martin is a rock star who thinks he's a chef. The City Food assignments led to 1,000 other shoots. And my love for an entrenchment in the restaurant scene grew. My work improved. And best of all, no one could fire me because I was now self-employed. Over the past 18 years, and it's been that long, I've had the opportunity to work with many of the top chefs and restaurateurs in this city. Harry and I came full circle. We shot the groundbreaking seafood cookbook with chefs Robert Clark and Robert Belcham. We shot the entire thing without plates. And believe it or not, they didn't have recipes. We just shot food that we thought was beautiful, and then they created recipes afterwards. So if you get a chance to have a look at this cookbook, it's pretty expensive, don't buy it. Just leaf through it at the bookstore. You don't mind that. Have a leaf through the next time you go. I shot the Bin 941-942 cookbooks with Chef Gord Martin. Shooting a cookbook is a pretty intense experience. I was sequestered with Gord Martin for 3 days. If there was a law against drinking in photography, we would have been arrested several times over. That particular shot, which is the last shot of the day, last shot of the shoot, we had a tossed pear salad, and we were contemplating, what should we do with the tossed pear salad? So we actually went out into the alley and had a couple of guys with cellophane just throw it up in the air. I shot the Provence cookbooks with my friends chefs Alessandra and J.F. Quaglia. There were no dramas at all on that shoot. I shot the Quattro cookbook with Antonio and Patrick Corsi. I gained 12 pounds on that shoot. See, the Corsis, when you work with them, they feed you constantly. And it's Italian food, so. I shot the Caren Mc Sherry's In a Pinch cookbook more recently. Caren enlisted 4 chef friends to help with the cookbook, all of them females. I heard things during the course of that week I can never repeat. And by the way, Caren Mc Sherry is one of the most awesome women in this industry. She owns the Gourmet Warehouse, she's just terrific. I shot a couple of cookbooks for the BC Chefs Federation with Chef Marcus von Obrecht. Marcus is a difficult one. It took us a couple of days to warm up to each other. He pulled me aside after a couple of days of shooting, and he said, hey, shots are looking great. I said, thank you. He said, you know what makes you a good food photographer? I was waiting on it. He said, you don't know shit about food. Whatever works. I think he meant that as a compliment. More recently, I've shot a couple of cookbooks, one for the Pacific Sands Beach Resort with all the local restaurateurs in Tofino, and the other one was for the renowned Rocky Mountaineer. They do terrific food. So. As much as I love to photograph food, my favorite images are the portraits of all the amazing people that I've had the opportunity to meet in the food and restaurant industry. And I'm going to share a few of those with you. People like Thomas Hass, who's the chocolatier. He didn't want to do this picture. He didn't want to dip his hands in the chocolate. His wife convinced him to do it. And then he ended up using this when he was inducted into the BC Restaurant Hall of Fame. Chef Robert Clark, who I've worked with on many occasions. Frank Pabst, from the Blue Water Cafe. Sean Heather, who owns half of Gastown. Mark Brand, who owns the other half of Gastown. John Bishop, the definition of a class act. I met John Bishop 18 years ago when I first started, and I thought to myself, there's a man with longevity. It's 18 years later. He's still doing it. It's amazing, John. Your restaurant's still terrific. I photographed Sean Cousins. After this went to print, Sean Cousins received several marriage proposals. And that is a true story. One of my favorite chefs, Chef Robert Belcham, who had Fuel and Refuel at the time. Now he's doing Campagnolo and another one. We've got the dynamic duo of Carrie and Nico Shermans, who've got the restaurant on Beatty Street, Chambord. Eric Cambolis, who helped launch my career. Bud Kanky. Bud still calls me kid every time he sees me. Hey kid. I'm 45 years old, but that's okay. I like it. Rob Feeney, Iron Chef. Sinclair Phillip from the Souk Harbor House. We did another shot with Sinclair. We had him in a wheelbarrow. I don't know what we were thinking. We almost killed him. We almost accidentally pushed Sinclair Phillip off of a cliff, and that is also a true story. Michelle Jacob, who's Crocodile. Pino from Gio Pino's. Tojo from Tojo's. Pino, Tojo, Pino, Tojo, Pino, Tojo. I was thinking if they opened an Italian-Japanese restaurant, whose name would they use? This is Ned Bell. I think Ned Bell is the best-looking chef in town. He's a good-looking guy. Sean Riley from the Global Group, the Global Empire. This is Big Boathouse, Gone Fishing. And Gord Martin, Go Fishing, right? Because that's his new restaurant. Chef Dana Hauser, she's the first female executive chef in the Fairmont's history, so we did some regular shots of her and then we glammed her up and shot her in her kitchen. I love that portrait of her. Andrea Carson, who did a stint at John Bishop's for several years. This is Alessandra in JF. Alessandra is the dancing chef. Has anyone ever seen this? Yes. She salsa dances like nobody's business. It's pretty impressive. Dino Reynards from Pier 7. This is Georgian Park from the Memphis Blues. Our inspiration was the Rocky film, and this little image caused quite a stir when it came out. I don't know why. These are the Corsi's, wonderful family. Jay Jones, one of the greatest bartenders in the city. And one of my all-time favorites, Caren Mc Sherry. And I've shot many other bartenders, managers, PR people, and waiters much more talented than I ever was. So when I was left to think about my role in the food and restaurant industry, I found it hard to define. I've been there for many restaurants' inception, creating the promotional material to showcase their concept, their hopes, and their dreams. The role may be small, but I feel it's relevant, and my appreciation of it remains boundless. Back to the email. So how do you become a professional food and restaurant photographer in this city? Here's the short answer. You buy a camera, it's essential. You learn your craft, it takes a few years, you gotta stick with it. You fall in love with what you do and the community of people that you do it with. You stay creative, and you do your absolute best every time out. You hope it sticks, and you're lucky if it does. And if you're really lucky, you marry a beautiful chef, you have a beautiful daughter, and you live happily ever after. Thank you.